You were told to find your purpose, to dream big, to chase passion like it was a fire inside you. But what if that fire burns you out before it ever lights the way? What if the pressure to find meaning is the very thing keeping you lost? There's a Japanese idea, simple, ancient, often misunderstood, that might change how you see everything. Not just what you do, but why you wake up at all. And maybe, just maybe, why you've been quietly unhappy, even when life looks good. We're born into a world that already has a script written for us. Before we learn to walk, we're asked to choose a direction. Before we understand who we are, we're asked what we want to become. At 5 years old, we're asked about our future job, as if the answer could possibly mean anything. At 18, we're expected to know what we'll do for the rest of our lives. By 30, we're supposed to have it all figured out. But what happens when the roles you've picked don't fit the person you've become? This is the silent crisis of modern purpose. Not the absence of meaning, but the overwhelming abundance of it. In a world of endless options, the fear isn't that we'll have nothing, it's that we'll choose the wrong thing and be stuck forever. This is why so many of us feel anxious, even when we're on track. Why the question, "Is this it?" haunts us in quiet moments, even when the boxes are checked, because deep down we know something's missing. Enter Ikigai, an ancient Japanese concept that loosely translates to reason for being. It's been marketed as a neat Venn diagram, a formula to find perfect alignment between what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. But the truth is more complex. Ikigai isn't a hack or a shortcut. It's not about certainty, it's about honesty. And honesty demands sacrifice. Psychologist Erik once said that the drive for meaning is rooted in biology, that we evolved to seek goals because survival depended on it. But now, we don't just need to survive, we need to matter. And that's where the pain begins. In the West, purpose has become performance. Career, a brand, a lifestyle to display. But the original spirit of Ikigai wasn't about achievement. It was about being, about daily presence, quiet joy, deep connection to community, to nature, to self. It was never about becoming successful. It was about becoming real. So what happens when we try to force purpose out of pressure? When we optimize our lives for clarity, but end up more confused than ever? That's what we're going to explore. The unspoken cost of chasing purpose too soon. The myth of finding the perfect path. The quiet wisdom in choosing, even when you're unsure. And the deep truth behind why settling isn't failure, but a form of freedom. This isn't a guide, it's a mirror. And if you're brave enough to look, really look, you might find that your life has been trying to tell you something all along. Maybe it's not about finding the right path. Maybe it's about finally listening. We're told to choose a path, long before we've had the chance to wander. What do you want to be when you grow up? A question asked to children who haven't yet learned how to be. This isn't harmless curiosity, it's conditioning. We begin to attach our worth to answers we don't understand, to labels we haven't earned, to futures we haven't lived. And so, we build a life before we build a self. By the time we start asking deeper questions, who am I really? Or what do I value? The foundation is already poured. We're deep into degrees, jobs, commitments, yet something inside feels misaligned, like trying on a suit that looks perfect on paper, but never quite fits in the mirror. Psychologist Erikson spoke of identity development as a core task of adolescence, but modern life rushes this process. We're pressured to lock in our path before identity fully forms. This leads to what Søren Kierkegaard called the despair of possibility, a paralysis created not by lack of options, but by having too many too soon. We chase certainty as a way to silence fear, but the cost of premature certainty is often inner fragmentation. We become people who've followed the map, but ignored the compass. And the worst part, from the outside, everything looks right, a steady job, a clear title, a respectable path, but inside, something aches, an invisible pain. It's the pain of realizing you've built a life that isn't truly yours, the pain of looking successful, while feeling lost, of smiling in photos while mourning the version of you that never got to live. This is where many arrive, confused, ashamed, and silent. They don't understand why they feel empty. They tell themselves they're ungrateful or broken, but they're neither. They're simply victims of a system that asked them to decide too early, to perform before they could explore. And because of this rush, many skip the process of becoming. They adopt identities like costumes, fitting the expectations of others, never pausing to ask if those roles are true. They choose careers like lifeboats, hoping they'll feel safe, stable, worthy. But safety isn't the same as fulfillment. Stability isn't the same as peace. And when we confuse one for the other, we lose touch with something essential: the freedom to evolve, to shift, to return to ourselves when the world's voice grows louder than our own. And yet, this pain is a signal, a quiet knock from the self you buried, not to blow up your life, but to come home to it. Ikigai offers a counterpoint. It doesn't demand clarity at the beginning. It invites exploration, iteration, presence. It understands that before you can walk a path, you have to grow your roots. Just like a tree that blooms only after its roots take hold. We're meant to unfold slowly. So if you feel behind, or unsure, or out of place, you're not lost. You're just being asked to pause, to ask not, "What should I do?" but "Who am I becoming?" And that shift, that subtle rebellion against the rush, might be the first real step toward your own life. We've all heard it. Follow your passion. 3 words that sound like freedom, but often feel like a trap. Because what if your passion isn't clear? What if it changes? What if you follow it and still feel empty? This is where so many begin to break. Not because they lack ambition, but because they're trying to live out a slogan. One that assumes passion is easy to find, or worse, that once you find it, everything else will fall into place. But passion isn't a map. It's a flicker, sometimes bright, sometimes faint. It doesn't always make sense, and it certainly doesn't guarantee success. Some things you love, you're not good at, and some things you're good at, you secretly resent. We force ourselves to monetize our hobbies, optimize our skills, package our identities into something productive. We're told that if we just align all the boxes, love, skill, need, and income, we'll unlock our Ikigai. But humans aren't Venn diagrams. We're not tidy intersections. We're messy, shifting, full of contradictions. In the pursuit of purpose, many lose themselves. They chase an ideal of passion that was never theirs to begin with, shaped by social media, by comparison, by pressure to be exceptional. And slowly, without realizing, they begin to alienate from themselves. Psychologists call this self-alienation, the feeling of living inauthentically, of acting in ways that don't reflect your inner world. And it's more common than we think. The irony? The more we chase passion like a prize, the more it hides. It becomes something to conquer, not something to feel. This is why some of the most gifted people feel the most lost. They're so good at what they do, they stop asking if they even enjoy it. They become trapped in their own competence, rewarded for roles that slowly erase them. Imagine a bird trapped inside a glass cage shaped like a heart, beautiful, admired, but still not free. That's what it feels like to follow your passion when it becomes performance. When passion becomes something you must prove, post, monetize. Ikigai was never meant to be a spotlight. It was a candle, a quiet, steady glow that warms, not blinds. In its original form, it asked something gentler. Not "What are you passionate about?" but "What makes your mornings meaningful?" Not "How do you scale your gift?" but "What brings you a feeling of presence?" It's not always grand. Sometimes your Ikigai is found in a small routine, a moment of connection, a task that grounds you, a conversation that feels true. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't need to find passion. Maybe we need to reconnect with the parts of us that never stopped feeling. The ones that still remember joy without pressure, curiosity without performance, love without proof. So if your passion confuses you, if the chase has exhausted you, stop. You're not broken, you're just human, and maybe it's time to stop chasing the fire and learn how to sit with the ember. We all want to be useful, to matter, to leave something behind that proves we were here. Sounds noble, and sometimes it is, but what happens when usefulness becomes performance? When value is measured only by output, productivity, applause? In the pursuit of matching, we often abandon ourselves. We learn to shape our actions around what others need. We tailor our energy to what gets praised. We become tools for someone else's purpose, and we call it success. The tragedy is subtle. You wake up every day and do the right things, but slowly, you feel like a stranger to your own life. Simone, Weil once wrote, "To be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul." But how can you grow roots in a soil that only values you when you bloom? We're not machines, but the world treats us like ones. You produce, you're worth something. You slow down, you're falling behind. And so you keep going until one day you look up and wonder who you've become. There's a kind of usefulness that drains you, the kind where your efforts serve everyone but you, where your giving becomes endless, but your being becomes hollow. You light the way for others, but you're burning your own wick to do it. This is the invisible burnout of modern contribution. We confuse being valuable with being valued. Ikigai offers another path. It doesn't ask you to be useful at all costs. It asks you to be present, to be aligned, to serve not from depletion, but from fullness. In traditional Japanese culture, usefulness wasn't just about what you produce. It was about harmony, living in balance with your community, with nature, with your own spirit. A farmer planting rice, a mother preparing meals, a neighbor sweeping the street. These weren't acts of sacrifice. They were acts of identity. Today, usefulness is often transactional, measured in money, metrics, reach. But in Ikigai, usefulness is relational, measured in presence, care, continuity. This shift changes everything. It means you're not valuable because of what you do. You're valuable because of who you are. When you're doing it with honesty, you don't need to save the world. You don't need to go viral. You don't need to be the best. You just need to be rooted, to choose work or rest that reflects your truth. Sometimes that means saying no. Sometimes that means stepping back. Sometimes that means doing something small, beautifully. So if you feel like your life is useful, but you feel invisible, listen to that. Ask yourself, am I giving from alignment or from expectation? Am I creating out of connection or out of fear? Because real Ikigai doesn't exhaust you, sustains you, and maybe the point isn't to burn brighter, but to last longer, like a lantern lit in the dark, not to prove your light, but simply to be it. We've never had more choices, and yet we've never felt more lost. Every path you don't choose becomes a ghost that haunts the one you did. Every yes becomes 1,000 silent no's. This is the paradox of modern freedom. We believe more options will give us more clarity, but often, they only give us more regret. You scroll through endless careers, lifestyles, locations. You see people your age doing more, being more, having more, and suddenly your life, once full, starts to feel like a mistake. The ancient mind wasn't built for this. It evolved in tribes, small groups, limited roles. Today, you can become anything, and in that infinite possibility lies a kind of quiet terror. What if you choose wrong? What if you waste your potential? What if you settle too soon or too late? Ikigai was meant to be a compass, but in the modern world, it often feels like a roulette wheel. The pressure to align your life with some perfect intersection of love, skill, value, and income becomes paralyzing. You sit there, staring at all the possible doors, and forget that you're allowed to open just one. Neuroscience has a name for this: choice overload. The brain becomes fatigued, not from lack of options, but from too many, and this fatigue leads to indecision, chronic second-guessing, a life lived in hypothetical versions of what could have been. This is why so many of us feel stuck. Not because there are no paths, but because each one feels like a gamble. And yet, here's the truth we avoid. There is no right path. There's only the path you walk, with presence. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi embraces imperfection, transience, simplicity. It reminds us that beauty isn't found in perfection, but in the flawed and fleeting. What if our life choices worked the same way? What if the goal wasn't to choose perfectly, but to choose honestly? To commit not because the path is guaranteed, but because you are willing to walk it and make it your own. There's deep wisdom in letting go of the myth that there's one ideal future waiting for you, and even deeper peace in understanding that meaning is made, not found. Ikigai isn't a destination, it's the courage to keep walking, even through fog, to say, "This is the life I choose, with all its trade-offs, flaws, and beauty." So if you feel like every step forward costs you something, you're right, but maybe the cost is what gives the path its weight, its shape, its soul. There will always be roads not taken, versions of you that live only in imagination. But there's also this version here now, asking to be chosen, and maybe that's enough. We treat settling like a dirty word, like it means giving up, falling short, choosing less. But what if settling is just another word for commitment? What if it's not the end of possibility, but the beginning of depth? You will settle, not because you failed, but because life demands it. Oliver Burkeman puts it bluntly, you will settle, and this ought to please you, because without settling, nothing takes root, nothing grows. To choose anything truly is to let go of everything else. And that's not a tragedy. That's what makes it sacred. We live in a culture obsessed with potential, with staying open, keeping options alive. But potential is a ghost. It doesn't feed you. It doesn't hold you when things fall apart. Only presence does. Only commitment does. Ikigai isn't about finding the perfect intersection of your life. It's about being brave enough to choose one and let it be enough. You don't need everything to line up perfectly. You need honest alignment, a close enough that lets you start building, start tending, start becoming. There's a Japanese saying, fall 7 times, stand up 8. But it's not about resilience in the face of failure. It's about returning to something you've chosen, again and again, like a gardener, planting in imperfect soil, trusting the seasons, believing that even in uncertainty, something beautiful can still grow. This is the quiet dignity of settling. It means you stop chasing every new spark and start feeding the fire you've already lit. It means you stop asking, what else is out there? And start asking, what can I create here with what I have? It's not glamorous. It doesn't always look impressive, but it's real. And that's where meaning lives, not in the endless scroll of imagined lives, but in the one you're shaping, moment by moment, with care. Ikigai isn't about never doubting. It's about choosing despite the doubt. It's about saying, this path matters to me. Even if I never go viral, never become rich, never feel certain every day. That's not settling. That's courage. Because to truly live a life, you have to let go of the others, not with regret, but with reverence. To mourn the lives you'll never live, and love the one you can. So yes, you will settle, but maybe that's not a compromise. Maybe that's a beginning. Maybe it's not giving up on your dream, but finally giving it a place to land, a place to grow, to fail, to rise, to root, because in the end, the only path that matters is the one you choose to walk. Fully, deeply, truly. Maybe the path doesn't appear until you begin walking. We spend so much time searching, analyzing, comparing, waiting for the perfect signal, the right conditions, the moment where everything finally makes sense. But life isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's a rhythm to be felt, and Ikigai, in its truest form, isn't a treasure to be discovered. It's something you live into one imperfect step at a time, not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to ask the right questions. It's about showing up, even when you're uncertain. It's about choosing presence over perfection, Stillness over spectacle, depth over direction. Ikigai is not a job title, not a passion project, not a flawless formula drawn on a whiteboard. It's the way you brew your tea in the morning, the way you care for someone with no audience, the feeling you get when time disappears, and all that remains is you doing something that matters, even if just for a moment. It's not about proving your worth, it's about remembering it. In a world screaming for productivity, Ikigai whispers, be present. In a culture built on comparison, Ikigai invites you to belong to yourself. And maybe that's what you've been craving all along. Not a path that guarantees success, but one that allows you to be real, to fail honestly, to choose freely, to grow slowly. So if you've been waiting to find your purpose, waiting for the passion that finally clicks, waiting for the certainty that never comes, stop waiting, start living, not perfectly but meaningfully. Pick something small, a task, a craft, a commitment, and give it your full attention. Let it anchor you, let it teach you who you are, let it change you, because the truth is, no one knows the way. There is no guaranteed path, no perfect plan. There is only this moment and what you choose to do with it. And maybe that's more than enough. A compass without a needle, not lost, just free. What we explored today is just a fragment, a single thread in the vast tapestry of who we are. But if it made you pause, even for a second, then that silence was worth more than 1,000 scrolls. If you're still here, I see you, and I thank you. You're invited to continue with a comment, a click, or even just a thought you carry into your evening. There are more questions waiting, deeper truths, harder paths, but you don't have to walk them alone. Like and subscribe only if it feels real. I'm not here for the numbers. I'm here to build something that speaks to your quietest self. Until next time, choose slowly, live honestly. And if you settle with love.